Before the arenas, before the awards.
This is b4Nashville Live. Have a question for our guest?
Send it to us via Messenger.
Here's your host, George Davis.
Hey, welcome back to Before Nashville, where we introduce the country stars of tomorrow to the country fans of today. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I've got a special guest, and this young guy, I got to tell you one thing. I'm a little bit jealous of him, and I'll tell you why in just a minute once we get to talking, because you'll find out soon enough. But before we get to that, 30 seconds, we'll be back, and I'll have my special guest with me right after this. Shout out to our sponsors.
Before Nashville is proudly sponsored by Go-Go Tuners, the go-to tuner for professional and amateur musicians. Get your Go-Go Tuner at gogotuners.com. By Heart to Heart Coffee, the coffee that gives back. Find out more at heart2heartcoffee.com. By Sibby's Apparel, worn by heroes, made with respect. Order yours at sibbysapparel.com. And by Three Rangers Whiskey, not for the weak or faint-hearted. ThreeRangers.com.
All right, a shout out to our sponsors. I want to thank them for helping us out with Before Nashville. The gentleman I've got joining me tonight is one of those. Actually, I got an email about his song. Usually I find folks on TikTok and Instagram, but I got an email about his song and listened to it. And I thought, man, I got to have him on. And I'm a little jealous of him, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But let's go ahead and welcome in Reeve Stimpson. Reeve, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, you're from Virginia originally. Are you still in Virginia, or are you in Nashville?
I'm in Nashville right now. Yeah, I've been here for about 6 years.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I'm kidding. So you grew up in Virginia. What kind of town was the town you grew up in? Was it a small town? Was it a rather large metro type area?
It was a relatively small town. It's called Powhatan. Whenever someone asks where I'm from, I say Richmond because no one's ever heard of Powhatan. But it's funny. I didn't realize kind of how small it was until I moved here. And then I remember it was, I think after I graduated high school, we finally got a Walmart, and that was like going to town. But no, it was definitely a smaller town for sure.
Is it one of those small towns where a lot of the older folks, instead of saying Walmart, they say the Walmarts?
The Walmarts, yeah. We get Wally World, yeah, everything.
Yeah. I love that one. It's small southern towns. It's the Walmarts. It's not Walmart.
It's the same. It's like the Facebooks.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, what was it like growing up in Powhatan?
It was great because I got to experience a little bit of everything. But Virginia is such a great state. It's kind of like my other favorite state, North Carolina, where you get the mountains, you get the ocean. But growing up in Powhatan was great because it was small enough where I got to really meet a lot of people. And I worked at a Food Lion place where you could go, a grocery store. And it was great because I love talking to people in general. And I got to work there for a few years. And it's funny because growing up there was great. When I got to actually start working there, I would keep my CDs behind the register when people would come by and be like, hey, just a heads up, if you guys want to listen to some country music, I live right up the road. You should check me out. And just pass people along in the grocery line.
That's some great self-advertisement, though. I mean, come on, sure, man. You couldn't ask for any better than that. You get people coming through the grocery store line all the time. So your musical upbringing, what were you listening to?
So I grew up a pretty eclectic taste. My grandparents at one point owned a record store that was paired with a Radio Shack. So I grew up on everything from mostly country until about middle school. I was listening to a lot of classic rock. And from there, my dad's father got me into a lot of like 50s and 60s R&B. So Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, that kind of stuff. That's soulful music that that's not as easily heard today. But I definitely say I grew up with the majority of stuff being country and classic rock for the most part.
Right. And that's the part that made me jealous when I read that you kind of grew up in a record store, because I'm a huge vinyl person.
The funny thing is, unfortunately, it was before I was even born, but my dad, he got to keep a lot of the, I've even got them here, all the boxes of cassette tapes and all the vinyls and stuff. So I've finally found a Sony Walkman the other day that I'm able to actually play these again. So
That's great.
yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, the Walkmans were a very small cassette tape player. Some of them had radios. I had one that had the radio on it too.
Oh, fancy.
And you put your headphones on and do your walking or working out or, jamming out while you were studying, which really didn't do any good for me because I pay too much attention to the music.
I'll
But
have- yeah.
so some of the influences that you had musically growing up, who were those?
So for country, it's guys like Eric Church, Dierks Bentley, definitely Dirks for sure. I love the traditional classic guys that were from the 70s for sure. But a lot of the stuff that I love particularly came from classic rock. There's the Eagles are a huge influence on me. And so is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Just bands like those where it's kind of Americana meets rock and roll is a good mix where it's kind of you're really focused on the chorus of the song and you're really bringing in a large group to listen instead of just country is great, but sometimes people can kind of get pigeonholed into being specifically over country, and that's where the Eagles did such a good job is bridging a couple of genres, and that's what probably my biggest influence.
Right. Well, and so on the countryside, I mean, some of the influences that they talked about, Alan Jackson, Tim McGraw, who were some of the other guys that you were really picking up on at that time? A lot of it sound like a lot of the 90s country because it kind of, with the Eagles, it kind of flowed into the 90s country pretty good,
True. Yeah. And that, when I was growing up specifically, I'd say the majority of the artists I loved were guys like Sammy Kershaw, Joe Diffie, Ronnie Millsap for sure. Guys like that specifically that really you could tell the first time you hear them, their voice. And it's just, I think that makes such a unique artist. A lot of people are trying to sound like so-and-so, but I heard guys, Sammy Kershaw is just one of those guys. I listened to a lot of George Jones. But my favorite guy I'd say of all time when it comes to songwriting, which definitely helped out as well as Chris Christopherson.
Oh yeah. One of the best songwriters ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Chris was amazing. Now, as you're growing up, and obviously, if you're handing out CDs, you're playing music at this time, and you're doing some recording and sharing that with folks. Were you in high school when you were doing that?
So I cut 5 songs right out of high school, and I just found the CD the other day of those songs, and I'm really glad that I'm the only person that has a copy of that CD. I'll just say that. But it's good to have because I like to know how far I've come in, at least my writing. And stuff comes with practice. You just become a better writer and a better singer. And I'd like to think I've gotten a little bit better since then. But I was doing that, and I was playing some shows right out of high school. My dad took me up to the local music store, and we bought a sound system, which was about probably the same size stuff that guys from Motley Crue used back in the 80s. Huge speakers. And I had no idea how to use any of them, but we figured it out. And before I even had an iPad to play music, I would print out 200 or 300 pages of guitar chords when I have to go to a bar and play. So I'd just be flipping through the pages and figuring out exactly what anybody wants to hear. So,
right. Oh my gosh, I remember those days so well. And I played in a band. We had the old PV-SP3s. They had I don't know, they looked like dual 65-inch subs. I mean, they were huge. And then it had the mids and the highs, it was such a massive set. So I know what you're talking about. Lugging those things around was a pain. So as you're growing up, you're going through high school and you're hanging out with folks, your buddies and stuff. What were their thoughts about you playing music and what you were doing at that time?
So I had a pretty small group of friends because of music. I didn't really even get into music until I got out of high school. I was doing a lot of stuff that was like poetry and more writing and stuff. And then I picked up a guitar, probably like the majority of guys do, to impress women. And that still hasn't worked out, but I'll find a way someday. I grew up with a specific group of guys that were always there at all my gigs too. My buddy Anthony and Manny and Joe, they would always come to a lot of my shows and stuff. And it was cool because I was able to find, there's a couple local colleges near where I'm from. So Longwood University is one of those spots, and I would go and play at a bar called McAdoo's, and they'd come up and see me. But it was good because I got to have a kind of a regular crowd come in and build that up as well. But yeah, in high school, the good part about playing the bad part about playing music is you don't really, it stems from not being on the football team or
Right.
not doing anything the other popular people are doing. So I just kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this at least. Let's see where it goes.
Right. Did you ever feel like because of that, that it kind of ostracized you from your classmates? You know, it was like, because they're, you know, the girls are always looking at the jocks. They like the guitar players, but they're always looking at the jocks in high school.
Sure.
And
Well,
so, you know, you kind of want to move past that.
I think I was ostracized before I was not playing on the football team either. So I kind of just, for a long time, I've just kind of been doing my own thing. I think I was homeschooled for 3 years during middle school. And I really think that during that time, both my parents really instilled in me. They were like, just kind of do your own thing. And if you conform because that's something you want to do, that's fine. But don't conform just because you feel like it's the right thing to do. And so I
Right.
kind of felt like making my own path and playing music was something a lot of people in my hometown were really not doing at the time. So I kind of had a leg up on that if I decided to continue with it.
Right. So now you get out of high school, you're still doing the music, you know, you said past high school, you're doing that. And you decided to attend the world famous Belmont University in Nashville.
I did. So I moved to Nashville, and then I decided to apply right before I went. And I was like, you know what? If I get in, I need to at least go there because I was planning on coming here regardless and just hitting the ground running. Um,
Right.
and when I got accepted, first you get accepted, and then you can get accepted into the songwriting department afterwards. There's a separate process for that too, where you have to give I think 3 songs that you've written on your own, and then record them and upload them. So luckily, I was accepted into that department as well, which turned out to be a really big help. I met a lot of really great professors of mine who are still in the industry who have written some really great country songs.
Mhm.
But I mean, just the alumni itself was something that kind of drew me in the first place. Brad Paisley and Josh Turner, Brian Kelly and Tyler from Florida Georgia Line both met at Belmont as well.
Right.
So
Right. We've got, I mean, I know people that have attended Belmont and they've been in um, they've been music business majors, or they've been songwriting majors, or they've been vocal majors. And Belmont is such a rounded school when it comes to the music industry. I mean, they give you so much that you can go to, everything from being a sound engineer all the way up to, you know, writing songs, performing songs, and that kind of stuff. While you were at Belmont, what was the one thing that you enjoyed most about that?
the one thing I enjoyed most about Belmont was probably, honestly, I pride myself in being a little bit of a suck up. So I loved specific professors of mine. The thing I loved the most about going to school in general there was learning how to make genuine connections instead of just being a suck up the whole time. Because obviously you can go there and people can tell you're disingenuine if you just want to hang out. But the good thing that I had that a lot of other students didn't, which I had a couple of years on them. So I took a couple gap years between high school and college. So when I moved there, I was already 21 when I started college. So if I wanted to go out and have beers with my professor, I could do that. So that was probably the fun part about going to school there as well. Because if I had somebody that I wanted to do a co-write with, and it was at a bar, a lot of people can't get in bars in Nashville after 10 o'clock, but
Right.
having that leg up at school was pretty cool.
Right. Did that help you with getting into the performance side of Nashville, like the bars and Broadway and, you know, all that kind of stuff?
Not as much. The stuff that I learned from Belmont was a lot of the how to get into the writers round circuits, which is, I mean,
Mhm.
for people who didn't know what that was, it's 2 or 3 guys get up on stage and you get an hour slot and you get to perform 3 or 4 songs each, all originals, which is a different thing that I didn't know about until I actually moved to Nashville and went through a program at Belmont called Bear House Writer Management. And so when I went through that, they kind of showed you, hey, here are the bars where people specifically go out to hear original music. Because
Mhm.
before then, I'd actually started to play at other bars. So I was within the first few months after I moved there, I started to play bars like Tootsie's and a couple other bars actually on Broadway itself where all the tourists were. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just covers and stuff, which is great. There's a lot of people that are out there who want to hear covers, but yeah, Belmont kind of helped me out into figuring, that's great if you want to do that, but you don't want to be in a cover band the rest of your life, then you should try to play some writers rounds.
Right. What was your favorite venue that you played or bar that you played a writer's round in?
So there used to be a place when I just moved here called the Blue Bar, and it was a pool table room as well as a writers round place. That was probably my favorite, and it closed down a month after I played. But I would go there and play like the first 3 or 4 rounds. I think the coolest place for other people who don't know a lot of other bars, Bluebird Cafe is like the standard. Everybody knows Taylor Swift and Garth Brooks, and I think it's where Garth first heard. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he first heard Tony Arata play the dance there.
Right.
When he heard it and where he wanted to pick that song up. But it's very historic. So that was really cool to play because you see it on the show Nashville, and you're like, oh wow, that must be a large venue. And you get in, and maybe 30 people are trying to get into an 8-person room. So.
Right. It's a very small place, but it's like you say, it's so iconic. For somebody that's like not been to Nashville or not checked out writers rounds, they've been to Nashville, but they've done the Broadway thing. They've done the touristy stuff, but they want to do kind of the off the beaten path side of Nashville. Besides the Bluebird, what's another venue that you would suggest to them to go check out, especially for writers rounds and original music?
I'd say the best one that a lot of people can get to pretty easily because it's pretty accessible to where a lot of people, stay downtown. It's called Listening Room.
Yep.
They used to be in a different spot and they moved it, but the new location is pretty great too. You actually have a stage where you can sit up on, and they've got the spot for 3 or 4 writers. I mean, the best part about writers rounds in general is you never know who you're going to see. You really never know who you're going to hear, because you could see somebody you've never heard of before and go,
Right.
oh, well, I don't know who that is. That's not Kenny Chesney. But then he plays 4 Kenny Chesney songs and goes, well, I'm the guy that wrote that. And it's so
Right.
much more impressive to guys like me and people who really love songwriting. You get to hear the story behind the song and stuff like that. So the listening room is probably the best spot.
Yeah. And speaking of songwriting, one of the questions that I love asking is, what is one song that you have thought to yourself, damn, why didn't I write that song?
I've got 2 actually. So
Okay.
first one that always comes to mind is "Settle for a Slowdown" by Dirk Bentley.
Mhm.
The hook of that song gets me every time. I can hear it a million times, but the hook is wheels just turn down the road ahead. If it hurts at all, you ain't showed it yet. And it's I'm not asking you to turn back around, but I'd settle for a slowdown. And oh man, it gives me goosebumps just hearing that one line.
Yeah.
That and "Anything But Mine" by Kenny Chesney.
Mhm.
It's probably one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time. But I think the music video really helped kind of me love the song even more. But the lyrics of that is just it's perfect. I'm a very beachy kind of guy, and anything Chesney does that's not overly beachy, I really love, because a lot of people don't really give him the credit outside of the beachy stuff. They'll kind of listen and just consider him the country Jimmy Buffett.
Right.
But he's got a lot of deep cuts, and that's one song that every little thing about it is just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a fantastic artist. We just saw him not long ago for the 3rd time.
Oh, where'd you see him at?
We saw him in St. Louis. He played at Busch Stadium.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we were down in what they call the Sandbar, like right up next to the stage.
Oh, you
So
were close. That's great.
Yeah, we had a great time. And my wife's a huge fan of his, so naturally we had to go. When we got the opportunity, we had to take it. So if um sorry, I lost my questions here. I want to refer back to them for just a second.
Sure.
If I were to look at your phone, first off, let me ask you this, because you showed the cassette tapes and you talked about having the vinyl. What what growing up was your preferred? Well, and even now, I guess, because I'm sure there wasn't streaming or a lot of streaming. growing up. But streaming, CDs, vinyl tape, what are what's the one media for music that you enjoy most?
Enjoy most, I'd say cassettes.
Mhm.
A lot of people my age will kind of say that they grew up with vinyl, and it's the cool thing to say. But a lot of people
Right.
my age did not grow up with vinyl. We grew up with CDs and we grew up with cassettes. Now we collect vinyl, we put it on our walls, and we act like we listen to it.
Right.
But my favorite way to really consume it and enjoy it is cassettes, because you're there from start to finish, and it's kind of like the radio. That a lot of things I miss about radio and TV is we kind of got to a point now where we have the ability to listen to anything and watch anything at any time of day. We can just pick and choose. And then now I'm like, man, when's the last time I heard a commercial, or when's the last time I didn't have the choice to pick a song? And I think that having so much instantaneous gratification has really hindered the actual enjoyment of listening to music. I mean, you're not an audience member anymore. You're the curator of every playlist you put on.
Right. That's a very good point, I have to say, because that's one thing that I've really noticed a lot with the streaming, and you really summed it up. You're more the curator than just an audience member, so to speak.
Right.
And so I think that's really cool. Now I gotta say, I'm gonna talk about your music for a minute. Because I listened this afternoon on the way home from work, and of course I've got it blaring from a streaming service, and I have to say that even though I work in radio, I'm liable to get in trouble. But um, I'm listening to your stuff, and you talk about Kenny Chesney, and you mentioned him several times. And I listened to the one song "Boys in the Band,"
Yes.
and that there's a couple of things about that song that stood out to me in the relation of Kenny Chesney. Your voice sounds a lot like Kenny Chesney on that song, and the song sounds like a song that he would do. Have you pitched that song to his management or anybody at all?
I have not. That's obviously a dream to have a cut from Chesney for sure. Um,
Mhm.
I used to be an intern at a place called Tape Room Publishing, which Ashley Gorley, one of the biggest songwriters in country
Mhm.
music, it's his
Yep.
publishing company, and I used to intern for them, and I used to hear all the stuff that came through, and I got to actually hear there was a Chesney song that they had cut, and I got to hear the early version of it, and it's cool because I know for a fact, obviously I know people that have had Chesney cuts, so I'm getting a little bit closer to the ability to actually try and pitch that to somebody who could probably pick that up. But um,
Mhm.
the second I wrote the chorus for that one and kind of came up with the progression, it was almost hard not to put a little Kenny Chesney into it.
Right, right, and it is very, I mean, it's just, I heard that and I'm like, "Golly." The thing that I love about listening to your music was you uh, first off, I'll say this, and I'm sure a lot of folks have said this before, you resemble, and I hate to make comparisons, but in this case, I have to. You resemble Dirks at a younger age a lot. And then on that song, your voice and just the feel of the song and everything came across as Kenny Chesney. But your other songs are more, I guess, uniquely you,
Right,
with your vocals and even the tone on some of them. It may be a little bit, maybe a little bit lower register or something like that. That it doesn't sound like the same voice all the way through, which to me is a good thing, because sometimes you get kind of that listener fatigue depending on the voice,
right.
where you're having to listen to it constantly. But it was very soothing, very easy to listen to music. And I really appreciate that just by that. Um, because I think that is such a really, unique thing for an artist to be able to do. Like you said, when you hear Kenny, you know it's Kenny. When you hear Alan Jackson, you know it's Alan Jackson. When you hear Garth, you absolutely know it's Garth.
Right.
But and not saying that if somebody heard Reeve Stimpson, they would know it was Reeve Stimpson. I mean, because it does sound like you. It's just there were little nuances within it that I picked up on that were,
Sure.
um, kind of different and kind of enjoyable. Um, And the new song, the one that we're going to play tonight, we'll talk about the backstory on it here in a little bit, but and we'll talk about even the song itself. But before we even get to that, I want to, if a lot of artists in Nashville, they have to do the downtown thing in order to make a living for a while. I mean, a lot of folks go down there and they have dreams of being a hit songwriter and stuff like that, but you got to pay your dues, and the best way to pay it is Broadway.
Sure.
There's very, very little way around it. So when you're doing a show, say on Broadway, what was the one song that was your favorite cover song to do when you were doing your sets?
My favorite cover song would either be something by Eric Church, something like Springsteen. Obviously, because you can do classic rock also a lot of times downtown. Anything probably like a Tom Petty Refugee is usually one of my go-tos. I'm usually able to channel a pretty good Petty kind of influence when it comes to vocals as well. I'd say that was probably the go-to.
That's a good song. That's one of my favorite Tom Petty songs too. Right. I wore, I don't know, 2 or 3 45s out of that song trying to learn to play drums to it. Now, when you're playing downtown, I mean, especially, and even out, I mean, it doesn't have to be just downtown. It could be on gigs and other places. What would you say is the most embarrassing stage moment that you've had?
It's funny. I can mess up vocally, and it won't be a problem whatsoever because everybody has bad days. I'm maybe just something where, and honestly, it's going to be hard for me to come up with an embarrassing thing because very few times do I feel embarrassed. No matter what, I love to just get up in front of people, and if I embarrass it, I just consider that part of the show.
Right.
I would say one time I was playing a very small gig one time, and I broke a string, and I literally had no idea how to put guitar strings back on a guitar. I was very early when I was trying to figure this out. So I had to ask other people in the bar if they knew how to please help me just figure out how to do this. I want to emphasize, this is very early. So I at least know how to tune a guitar and put new strings on it now. But having to ask people how to get a guitar string back on was probably the most embarrassing because they'd be like, shouldn't you know how to do this if you're, the guy playing this? So, yeah.
That's hey, we all need help sometimes, It doesn't matter. We all have to have help sometimes. So if you're in preparing for a show, normally what consumes most of your time? Is it getting yourself mentally ready? Is it your physical appearance, your wardrobe, or what? What takes you the most time to prepare for a show?
The most time that takes me to prepare is really making sure that the people I've got with me are comfortable with the songs, because I know for a fact most of the time, I know the lyrics because I grew up with them. The guys I'm playing with might not know, maybe they didn't grow up with country or classic rock as much. So my thing is, I know that no matter what, if we go and play somewhere, I have the ability to feed off the crowd for energy.
Right.
I do great in high energy environments because if people are going to be loving it or hating it, at least, I'm going to be giving a full authentic self to them that they can feed off of as well. But yeah, the majority of the stuff that I think is time consuming before a show would definitely have to be making sure everybody else is on the same page. Because I love being the guy who is a part of the group, but also a little bit taking charge of the group and going, here's where our weaknesses, here's where our strengths are. And kind of just being the band leader.
Right. So do you play with a normal, a full band and a normal group of guys? Does that change up for you or
I've got in my back pocket some guys that can help me if one of my main guys drops out. But I've got Kevin Farwell on my lead guitar, Severin Brock on my drums, and Tim Kenner on bass. And they're some of the best musicians that I've played with. They all come from different bands and stuff. So they all have either been doing the Broadway scene or they've been playing from other bands with different genres, and they can bring a lot to the table. Especially if we want to do covers of songs from different genres and make it more country. It's easy because I know the songs, and then they can bring in a different feel to it that the crowd might take in see in a different light, basically.
Right. Right. Do you find that that's a lot? Well, all artists, I mean, it doesn't matter kind of where you're at in your career, but I'll say the majority of artists will play either solo or with another guitar player, or they'll play full band. And this is maybe one of those questions. It's kind of a duh question, but do you prefer more the bands or do you prefer the solos, or is it dependent on the situation that you enjoy one or the other more?
I would say it is dependent on the situation for sure. If it's a more intimate setting or if it's an original song where it's pretty slow, then I'd love to do just acoustic. But there's something about having a full band that I didn't really get until I moved here that just it paints the full picture of the song. I mean, there's no way that the crowd is going to react the same way to the same song if you played it just acoustic or if you had a full backing band. I mean, I love having a band behind me because it just really it makes me first of all very happy, and then the crowd's going to know that I'm excited to just be lucky enough to play with these guys on stage. Um,
Right.
that's a huge thing. It brings that much more energy. But no, it's not a duh question because a couple of years ago I'd have been like, oh yeah, I just want acoustic, just that.
So um, if you were to run into yourself at say 15 today and you bumped into yourself on the street and you started a conversation and your 15-year-old self said, "Hey, I really like music and I want to get into that." What advice would you give to your younger self knowing what you know now?
I would say the things that you are using, such as music, to find happiness elsewhere, you can find it in what you're doing. I tried to use music for a long time to kind of make me happy in ways that would get me other places. For instance, I would, if I played music and wrote songs, then I would hope that women would like it. I would hope that girls were impressed by it. Or I
Mhm.
would hope that people who I was trying to get the attention of would love that. But honestly, I would tell myself that you're going to be even more happy if you make yourself satisfied with the stuff you're doing on your own and didn't worry about the people you're trying to impress because you're going to find fans. I mean, your biggest fan is going to be someone you've never met, and my biggest critic is going to be someone who's probably a good friend of mine.
Right.
So I would tell myself to. I mean, obviously, I probably wouldn't listen to myself because I was probably very stubborn and probably still am. But I would tell myself for sure to maybe drop the ego a little bit in order to have a great song. Because sometimes when you're co-writing, you're not willing to let go of your idea. But I would say drop the ego in order to make the best version of the song possible because it's going to happen. But you have to trust the process.
Right. Right. Well, we're gonna take a break here. We're gonna play the song. It's called "Wannabe," and kind of give folks an opportunity to hear that. And then we'll get back into some more, talk about the backstory of the song, and then have some other questions. And if you're watching or listening and you've got a question you want to ask Reeve, all you have to do is just hop on our Facebook page and you can put in the comments and it'll pop up and then we'll shoot that to him. Okay. So be sure to do that. And we'll be back with Reeve Stimpson and Wannabe coming up in 30 seconds.
B4Nashville is proudly sponsored by Go-Go Tuners, the go-to tuner for professional and amateur musicians. Get your Go-Go Tuner at gogotuners.com. By Heart to Heart Coffee, the coffee that gives back. Find out more at heart2heartcoffee.com. By Civvy's Apparel, worn by heroes, made with respect. Order yours at civviesapparel.com. And by Three Rangers Whiskey, not for the weak or faint-hearted. ThreeRangers.com.
We'll try to keep up, let's make this last till we run out of road or we run out of cash. So if you're in the country, rock and roll, honey, then we're off to a real good start right now. So sing me a song, love me all night. If you can do that, we're gonna be just fine. Well, maybe I'm hard to handle, but I've got a heart to gamble. And if you wanna ride with me, then come on, come on, come on. If you wanna be rocking with a wannabe rolling stone. Can you be my strawberry fields forever? Gold dust, woman, lace and leather. Take my hand, let's live those songs together forever and ever. Well, maybe I'm hard to handle, but I've got a heart to gamble. And if you wanna ride with me, then come on, come on, come on. If you wanna be rocking with a wannabe rolling, wanna be rocking with a wannabe rolling stone.
And that is Reeve Stimpson, and "Wannabe" is the name of that song. And it's when I first heard that, the classic rock influences came through so much in that, especially in the start because of the cowbell, and then you had the big power drums, and then just the guitars and all, and it just all built up and was super cool. And I love the way that you incorporated all of the different song titles from classic rock in there.
Thank you. I'm glad. I love when people can catch that for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious if somebody sat down with that just one time, how many of the song titles they could pick out of that. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I got some of them. There were a couple in there because I was thinking, okay, one of them I thought was a Motley Crue song. There was the Eagles. Gosh, of course, the Rolling Stones. And I'd have to go back and listen to it again and write them down. I can't do it off the top of my head. That's how bad my memory is. But it was just, I love that about the song. It's like just all these different song titles in there. It was just so cool to those. And the process of writing that song, because of the titles in there, did that make it more difficult to do it that way than a normal song would be?
Not really. I'd already come up with the progression and the melody and stuff like that, and I'd actually written an entirely different song called "Uphill from Here." And I just wasn't satisfied with the chorus, and I wasn't satisfied with the message of the song or what it was trying to accomplish. So I was listening to some songs, and there's a song by Old Dominion called "Song for Another Time." And all it does is use song titles to kind of paint the picture of something, of a story that's going on. So I thought that'd be a great idea. Even the first line of the song, "Running on Empty," Jackson Brown, like from start to finish, I try to fit in stuff, but I was only going to do it if it wasn't going to be something I had to force in there or that didn't make sense. If I did that, I knew it would just seem like I was kind of forcing something that really didn't need to be in there. And I knew that if that happened, someone would recognize it and go, yeah, he's trying a bit too hard there. But no, I think everything kind of fit perfectly into place, every little block.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of that Old Dominion song. I knew there was a song that I'd heard that had done that, and I couldn't think of "Song for Another Time." And I kept thinking, golly, I know somebody else has done something along those lines, but I couldn't think of who it was. So if I were to, I don't know if I asked this question a while ago. I don't think I did. If I were to pick up your phone and start thumbing through your playlist, say you're from, I don't know, today or whatever, what are the top 10 songs that I would find that you're listening to?
Top 10 songs. All right. Right now, I'm listening to. Why don't we just do it? Hold on. I got a couple for you right here. On Spotify, we went through Peace of Mind by Boston. I've been rocking for a while. Really anything by Boston. Midland dropped their full album, so I've been listening to Sunrise Tells the Story. That's number 2.
Oh, man.
I think Gary Allen has been on my brain the last 3 or 4 days. So there's a great song called Kiss Me When I'm Down. A great turnaround hook. Tom Petty, I've been listening to Mary Jane's Last Dance. Is number 4. Number 5 is Riley Green. He dropped 2 new songs, and there was one of them off there called Get Back Home. That's number 5. Number 6, because Stranger Things pushed Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush so much, I had to listen to that. And I just got a notification the other day. Apparently, I'm in the top 5% of Spotify listeners to listen to that song. So I might have worn out that song as well. Shout by Tears for Fears. Head Over Heels, Tears for Fears. Mad World, Tears for Fears. I'm going through a little bit of an 80s thing as well. The last 2, Rain So Far Away, Flock of Seagulls. Oh, and there's a band that I just discovered that's really great. And they've got a sound that's a mix between like Boston and Foreigner, and it's called Moon City Masters. The song is called Taking It Back. If you get a chance, you should listen to that. You'll definitely hear the Brad Delp and Lou Gramm influence that really comes through the vocals. I was very impressed.
Okay. Moon City Masters. I'll write that down. I always write that down whenever I get some interesting tidbit like that, just so I don't forget. So I'll have to check them out. And it's so funny because I'm sitting here listening to all these songs that you're talking about, and I'm like, we're like kindred spirits when it comes to music, because Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill, I'm probably in the top 10% of listening to that song, maybe even up there in the top 5. There's just something about that song that just kind of, I don't know what it is. It's just cool. And I think that's, I remember playing it in radio. That's how long I've been in radio.
Oh, wow.
And I played Tears for Fears too, just so you know, and Flock of Seagulls. So I've been in radio for a minute. And so, I mean, it just brought back all these memories. I mean, songs I hadn't even thought about, like, like Shout from Tears for Fears or Flock of Seagulls, and Kate Bush. I just saw, somebody the other day. Gosh, who was it? There's a female singer that does a version of that song that, golly, I cannot remember who it is, but I was listening to it and I'm like, dang, this is so good. Actually, I know who it was. It's a friend of mine, and she's I think she does some producing in Nashville at 117 Studios, Justine Blazer.
I know that name for sure. Okay.
Yeah, she had a version of that up, and I was just like, oh man, she just nailed it.
Yeah,
And,
there's another Nashville artist too, I think, that did a cover of that called Megan Knight. She did a cover. That's a really good version of it as well.
Yeah, I've actually interviewed Megan, and I think that may have been the one that I played for her was when she was on, was that cover, or a part of it anyway. When you're writing, we're going to get back to the writing. Well, first off, let's go back to Wannabe and give me the backstory on the song.
So Wannabe is 100% about my love of classic rock. That's basically all it was at first. It's still what it really is. And then I kind of turned it into if you want to go with me, if you want to be on this kind of crazy path, then you're going to have to, go through some of the crazy stuff that these songs have referenced in the past. It's kind of like, it's kind of hard to find a girl who understands the music industry, much less one that wants to come along with you while you're touring and all this different stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna write a song about, you're welcome to come with me, but it's going to be a crazy ride. So if you want to be rocking with Rolling Stone, I thought it was I love the hook itself. I love songs that I write that I can actually still love the hook, because I feel like I'm still a listener.
Right.
And that's one of those songs for sure.
Yeah, and that's what caught me on the song was the hook because I was like, man, that's just really it's really good, you know. It's and I kind of thought that the backstory came from. I mean, you could tell when you listen to the song if you're paying attention that it's relationship oriented, you
Right.
know. And actually, I mean, it could go either way. A female could sing that song, and it would be the same way, you know,
Sure.
talking to a guy and say, "Hey, if you want to be with me, you got to be ready for this wild ride because that's what it's going to be."
Exactly.
Now, you, um, I'm going to get a little personal with this question, okay? And I always forewarn people, and I tell them, you know, this is a question that I ask, but it's to get folks to know you and to understand you a little bit better. But if there's something about it that you don't feel comfortable with, you can just say pass and we're good to go. Um, when it comes to your music career, have you ever struggled with any self doubt? You know, like,
Sure.
why am I doing this?
Oh, for sure. I almost sometimes I get to a point where I really wish I wouldn't have done something so crazy as music because it is tough sometimes to find, like in the song, it's tough to find somebody who wants to come along with you, and I think it's
Mhm.
more of a loneliness thing sometimes too because you want this music career, and when someone doesn't understand that as much, you kind of get a little discouraged. I think I've definitely gotten down on myself for sure. I didn't think, I'm sure every artist and writer doesn't think they're good enough just because they're not where they want to be yet. Um,
Right.
but no, I've kind of changed the way I view that a lot because I just take it if I'm not where I want to be. It's not usually because of the amount of talent that you have. It's usually the amount of work you're putting in. And a lot of the times when I ran into some self doubt, it wasn't me going, people don't like me. It's more of, I need to just be working harder. I need to put it in front of more people. There are going to be people that don't like my music, no matter how popular I get.
Right.
I need to just put it in front of people who are going to be fans because they really do like the song. That's kind of just something I've had to realize a little bit.
Right. Now, I'm sure you, like most people, have heard the story behind Luke Combs' song "Doing This." You know, he was asked that in a radio interview. You know, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? And this is a question kind of along that lines. And it's four really simple words, but the meaning of them can sometimes be almost self-reflective. And I ask myself this a lot, and I'll be honest, I do. But is it worth it?
100%, 150% actually. It's something that I've started to do because I was looking for something, and now it's my best form of therapy.
Mhm.
It's my best way to reflect. I get up in the morning, and when I have the opportunity to sit down and write, it's the best way to go through whatever stuff I've been thinking about or whatever kind of trouble I'm worried about. It's the best de-stressor. I mean, I can sit down and literally write out how I'm feeling, and it's great because it's not only the best form of therapy for me, but eventually my goal, I mean, if I can get it to other people who can connect to stuff, that's the best form of therapy too, is knowing you're helping somebody else through whatever time that they're going through. If it's a heartache or whatever, if I can write a song that is so truthful to me, I know that somebody else is going to have to go through that eventually. So
Right.
someone hopefully will connect to that. So that's 100% worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and there was another song that another question that came to my mind whenever I said that. Oh, okay. I just remember what it was. When you're talking about that, what when do you find yourself most creative? Like time of day?
Either super early before I've had coffee or super late when I should be in bed. Um, it's usually I'll usually lay in bed at like midnight or 1 a.m. and I'll have an idea. Unfortunately, if I can't sleep, I'll roll over, grab my phone, and do a voice memo. And if I love it so much, I might just run into the other room, into this room I've got here, and just do a quick demo of something because there's so many voice recordings on my phone right now where I'm going through and I know it says voice recording from 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's just me going, and the next day I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? So I have to get up sometimes and be like, let's put this baby to work and let's actually write some of the song.
Right. Hey, I mean, I have to disagree with you though, because I can't do anything before coffee. I don't even think I breathe before I have coffee, to be honest with you.
I would love to have coffee when I write. And I'm the same way. If I'm doing anything productive, I've got to have coffee. But coffee for me, it's like I focus so much that I can't let my brain get kind of weird and I can't let it get creative.
I got you. I
Yeah.
got you. I totally understand that. So you're getting ready to head out on tour tomorrow. What are your top 3 essentials that you have to have?
My top 3 essentials that I have to have as far as touring. A good marketing plan, number one. Are we talking physical or are we talking just in general?
Just in general.
A good marketing plan for sure. I've got to, people have to know where I'm playing. I'm at the point right now where if I don't give people a good heads up as to where I'm going to be, then people might not know that I've even left town, which that's fine. That for sure. I'd say physical. I have to have Celsius energy drinks. I'm not sponsored by them whatsoever, but if I do get sponsored by them, I have you to thank for putting it on the air. Celsius energy drinks, and then
By the way, my wife just discovered those.
Oh my gosh! So, do you like them as well?
I haven't tried them yet, but she likes. They have a peach something that she's just like, oh my gosh, this is like the best ever.
They are. I have a friend that makes fun of me. Actually, my guitarist girlfriend, she makes fun of me all the time. She's like, I think you're just addicted by it now. I'm like, what? I can go through a couple thousand milligrams of caffeine. It's no problem. Those, and I have to have, there's a thing called a Helix that is an essential for me. It's really been a game changer as far as me playing guitar, but also for me writing songs. And for people who aren't as versed into like music gear, a Helix is a small box that's basically a pedal board, but you can create any tone you want. If I wanted to find a tone that kind of emulated something off of Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd, I would look it up, kind of create a patch, and it would just build it there for me. And I'd have it for all my songs where we're playing live. I can just go song to song to song instead of having to change up the way that the pedals are. Those are easily the 2 biggest physical things that I have to have essentially. Caffeine and guitar.
There you go.
Yeah.
So if you could collaborate on a song with a current artist, what artist would that be?
Current artist would either be Riley Green.
Mm-hmm.
I love that guy so much. His music is. I really think he's got the potential to be this generation's Tim McGraw if he keeps the way he's doing. I mean, especially he kind of got a later start in music, but he's also had the ability to do, like, I think he did Redneck Island on CMT or one of the CMT reality shows.
Right.
Riley Green is probably somebody I'd love to collaborate with. It's very authentic. And as soon as my little brother introduced me to his music, and as soon as I heard, I was like, man, I really need to step up my game when it comes to like these big chorusy songs or really connecting, because it's tough to be popular in country, but also for me to be like, I really love what this guy is saying.
Right.
And he's got the full package too. So I kind of have to hate him at the same time. Yeah.
He's a very likable guy though. But,
yeah, he is. He's unfortunately very likable.
Right. What song of yours would you want to be most remembered for?
At the moment, I would say Swear by Tonight. I wrote that song. I had probably 4 hours to kill one night. And by that, I mean, it was probably midnight. And I decided I wanted to just do some writing. I put on the movie Urban Cowboy, and I'd seen it a couple times before. But for some reason, I loved it so much. I was like, you know what? The next time I'm going to watch this, I'm going to put it on mute. And I'm going to try to write a song that would fit the rhythm and fit the kind of vibe that this was putting out. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to the vinyl soundtrack of the Urban Cowboy soundtrack, and also just put the movie on mute. And I wrote that song, and it's one of those where it came so fast to like the writing process that it's something now that it's my favorite song that I have written that I love listening to. I love Boys in the Band. I love Wanna Be and stuff that I've done before. But Swear by Tonight is it's such a good song to me personally. And if I can really sit back and enjoy a song and forget that I wrote it, much less forget that I sang on it, then I think that I did a good job on it for that reason.
So you go from being the artist to being the audience at that point. Just
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, I love
And
that. I
the
think that's
biggest part of
awesome.
that was the production itself. Because I went in, I have a guy I usually go to for production named Mike Stanowitz in Nashville. He works at a couple different studios, but he's got his own house studio now. We've consulted on all the projects that I've done here in town. And I brought this song to him kind of with a very rough acoustic version. And he basically showed me the best way we could do it. We got some session musicians on it and guys that really fit the exact vibe of the song I was going for. And we filmed a music video for it as well. It's funny. A good friend of mine, Severin Brock, who's also the drummer in the band. Him and I were like, you know what? Let's see if we can rent a bar, use the camera equipment we have, and actually see if we can put together a music video. And I was so amazed at the good work that he did. He directed it. He helped to edit it. And I watched the whole video come together, and it was basically just like watching a modern day urban cowboy scene, which is exactly what I was trying to do for the song.
Wow. Is that available on YouTube?
It is. It's under my YouTube channel, but if you just type in "Swear by Tonight" Reeve Stimpson, it's there. We booked a bar. It's called Mickey's Tavern here in Nashville, and I needed somewhere with a pool table, and I needed somewhere with an old jukebox, and they had both of them. And we were able to find a couple of actors and actresses off Facebook that I just posted about for a casting call. And I needed a guy who could play a John Travolta character and a guy who could play a Deborah Winger character. And they did so well. I honestly, if you get a chance, you really should check it out just because of the performance that everybody put into that. I think they did great.
That's great. I'll check that out. Probably tonight once we get done. What's the most memorable show that you've played up to this point in your career?
I did a kind of a showcase in Virginia at a theater. And it was one of those kind of things where you were almost competing for an opening spot later on. I did a performance there, and everybody else was doing cover songs to kind of get through. And I came through and did an original song, and that helped me get on to the next round. That it's been the most memorable so far because I didn't win, which is great because I had somebody the next day who was one of I think either the owner of the theater and say, you know what, they called, I think my dad, and they were saying that people were kind of a little disappointed that I didn't actually get to the next point. And that was really reassuring to me because the best part about not winning was I had people come up after me and were going, hey, you know what, we like your original music that you did. Where can we find this? So
Right.
if anything, I was able to not win and still actually gain some legitimate followers from it, and meet more people instead of just getting the tap on the back being, good job, man, you did great. So I loved meeting those genuine people afterwards who were actually interested in my songs instead of just hearing somebody's cover of a song. And they all did great too, for sure. I'm not downplaying, anybody else's ability to play covers, but it means a lot when someone connects to something that I've already written.
Right. Do you find it harder or easier these days to organically grow your fan base?
I would say it's easier to organically grow it than it was before, but I'd say it's harder because the market is more saturated. Anybody can make a movie, anybody can make a song, and anybody can release it to the public. But that doesn't mean that song's going to go anywhere or that the movie's going to be picked up by a major streaming service. I mean, there's so many people that it's kind of like the participation trophy generation that I grew up in. Everybody thinks that they can do it, and then they might be spending years on a false idea of themselves. I definitely think it's harder for people to push their own stuff, but I think it's easy to have the ability to do it. You don't have a record label behind you that's able to have a PR team, but you can be your own PR team. So
Absolutely, yeah.
the independent game has stepped up a lot, but there's a lot more independence, basically.
Yeah, there is. And there was something I was reading the other day about that, and I just thought that was just crazy. Um, you're putting together, you're promoting, um, a, a festival, say a 3-day country music festival. And when you're promoting a festival, you're putting it together, you have to pick out all your artists. You have to figure out, who you're going to have on, the different stages on what days. So this is like let's say a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday festival,
Sure.
as opposed to a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. What three artists would you choose to be your headliners for each of those days?
For each of those days, first I'd have to put this on the beach, either in Florida on a stage, or I have to put it on the beach, maybe in Carolina or something. But the headliner for the last night, 100% is going to be Chesney. The first night, I would have to go with, because Chesney has also done some stuff in the past with him, I would go with Church.
Mhm.
This event's going to cost a little bit of money to book, it sounds like already.
Oh yeah.
But Chesney and Church, and in the middle, I would go with like a Young Bucks kind of night, and I would love guys. I would think Riley Green would be the headliner for that one as well. I know I've given some of the same artists for these answers, but it kind of just I hope it solidifies the fact that these are the guys that like I consider the kings of what they're doing nowadays.
Right. And I will have to say, I've not had that combination put out. I don't even think I haven't had Eric Church. Well, I have had Eric Church before. But yeah, you're definitely putting out some money. I mean, between Church and Chesney, you're talking, probably $4 million.
Yeah, or I just hire myself for $20 a night, and we'll
Right.
see where it goes. So
There you go. Hope for the best.
accepting donations.
Right, there you go. Put up your tip jar or use a pickle jar,
Yeah.
and have folks donate through pickle jar. So where do you see your career in 5 years?
In 5 years, I would like to have some sort of commercial success as far as radio. By that, I mean I would like to have 1 to 2 songs on the radio itself. I know that sounds like a long ways away for 5 years, but a lot of people may not realize a lot of the work that goes into that. But also, I'd
Mhm.
love to, in that 5 year period, build my own independent. Well, we've already kind of started an independent label itself called Coastal Records, which we kind of use as a parent company to all the stuff that we do, whether it's music or video production. So I'd like to keep everything as independent as possible until I get the need for a record label, which I know everybody tries to go for a label right off the bat, and they're great for sure, but you may be left in the dust afterwards after a 1 year deal.
Right.
So I would say within those 5 years, I would love to just tour everywhere, because I know that that's the most genuine way to find an audience. Anybody can put out streams and TikToks all day long, but if you don't tour and go to all the specific spots you need to hit, then you're going to also be left in the dust.
Absolutely. You again, well, just real quickly, as we wrap things up here, where can folks find more about you personally and your music? I mean, we know now with streaming services, pretty much everywhere, people are on all of them.
Sure.
But just kind of give out some specifics on, like where they can find out more about you on a kind of a personal level, and then your career and your music as you're going through, and then the music itself, where they can find that at.
Sure. So I'm on all streaming services as far as Apple Music, Spotify, um, Amazon Music, Apple. I mean, everything that's got a streaming service, I'm on it for sure. As far as music goes, I would kind of love to push and not just because I'd love to have more followers, but between Instagram and TikTok, it's good because I can connect with people more, and that's what I love. So I want people to know that I'm not just a guy trying to make country music, trying to write songs. I'd love to actually tell them the story behind the song, or maybe some kind of like weird, funny video that I'm putting out where I'm doing impersonations of other singers. I feel like if you listen to my music, that's great. And I love that people listen to my music, but I want people to also know that the personality that I'm trying to putting out, you don't get to see unless you're at a show. So if you come to a show, you'll be able to see the energy and the craziness that I'm able to put out towards people. But if you want to see that same kind of craziness, I would say TikTok, which is RS Official Music, or my Instagram, Reeve Stimpson Official. All those show a little bit more of my actual personality. And I think people would kind of appreciate that more than just hearing me play a Morgan Wallen cover and post it and keep posting and posting until, I get to the amount of followers I'm trying to get to. So those social media outlets for sure.
And again, I'll say it this way. That's one of the things that I admire when you say that, because I think so many artists today are trying to show their music ability and not show their personality to people. And I think that kind of separates them. I mean, like I said, being from radio, that's one of the things that they say, one of the things that a terrestrial radio station can offer that most Sirius XM or any of those, or even Spotify, can offer, is that personality, somebody that can tell you, what's going on, or that can share a story with you that is in their life, but that you can relate to, whether it's, having a goldfish or having a dog or kids running around the house or things like that, things that you're going to relate to. And I feel like that social media is so focused, especially coming from a record label standpoint, that they look at the music too much and not enough of the people.
Sure. No, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
And so go check Reeve's stuff out. I mean, he's got a lot of great music out there. Wannabe is just one of several amazing songs that he's got. And you really need to go check those out. Follow him on Instagram, follow him on TikTok, shoot him a message, say, hey, I saw you in Before Nashville, really like your stuff. I want to, just let you know. We're also going to put Wannabe up on our Before Nashville playlist that you can find on Spotify.
Awesome.
And so you can go through and hear a lot of the past artists that we've had on there on the show before, and check out all their music. But Reeve will be the latest that we'll put up, and we'll do that right after the show tonight. So Reeve, man, thanks a lot for. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just mind if I say one more thing as well.
No, go right ahead.
I will say, if there's anybody in particular in Virginia, I will be doing two shows. One, August 14th, I'll be at Richmond Raceway for the NASCAR race. I'll be playing 145 to 245, and then I'll also be at Martinsville Speedway for Halloween weekend for that NASCAR race as well. So all this stuff is going to be in my social media if you check that out as well. But I'll be playing those two NASCAR races as well.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. That's generally something I try to do, is to hit on upcoming shows for people. So we want to make sure that they're aware of that. Now, what were the dates? You said one is Halloween, and what was the earlier one?
One is the Saturday of the Halloween weekend for Martinsville, and then I'll be playing Richmond Raceway August 14th.
Okay. All right. So we'll make sure that we get all this stuff put up before August 14th so that people can listen, and hopefully we'll have some listeners in Virginia that can check you out live, because I think it's going to be fantastic to see you live. So give Reeve a follow on all of his social media, TikTok and Instagram in particular. You can go to his website, find out more about him, his full bios there, and and then wherever you get your music, whatever streaming service you're using, then hit that as well. So Reeve, man, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
and I had a great time talking to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much.
So don't forget, coming up on Thursday night, we'll be back with more Before Nashville. I'm sorry, Monday night. This is Thursday. So Monday night, we'll have another guest on Before Nashville. And I ran off and left my calendar upstairs. I believe it's Kate Cameron, but I'm not 100% positive. But just keep your eye out, and we'll let you know who that is. So until then, you guys take care. And remember, like I always say, love the ones you hug and hug the ones you love.